As a nerd in school, one of my friends was a nerd at the time. His name was Aiden, and he had been a nerd since grade 8. This was around the time he was in his junior year of high school, and he basically really had a lot of on his plate. He basically was a nerd on computers, but he also had to stay on top of his schoolwork. His parents were pretty strict, so he had to make sure he gets all of his work done. It was a pain in the ass, but at the same time, he can't really blame them, can he? Now, Aiden at the time was on certain sites that he wasn't supposed to be on, but he never told his parents since he got a new laptop. This was back in 2015. So he got a new laptop and he started having a great time. He started pretty much interacting with people his age and started hanging out with some of his friends. But there was one few incidences where something had happened. He was told by a few friends about this site called the Deep Web. The Deep Web is basically a site where you get to view lots of different things, but some of the stuff are dangerous. There are hackers, etc. Of course, Aiden just thought this was all a hoax and didn't even bother to believe in those rumors, but he would soon later regret that. Aiden went on his computer when he got home and went on download Tor, and he was on the Deep Web. He started going through different places, and he honestly really thought that it was really interesting. He found some photos that didn't really excite him, but there was stuff that he shouldn't be on. There was illegal pornography to killings, hire hitmen, drugs, etc. They all had it, and that is literally something Aiden wasn't fazed by, is all this stuff that was listed on the Deep Web. He explored a few chat rooms and chat with some random people, but then there was this one person who sent him a link to something. Aiden, being the curious guy he was, he ended up clicking on the link, and it was a big mistake, as what appears to be a live stream. It turns out that there was someone who looked to be maybe in his mid-20s. He had a girl tied to the bed, and he had a knife. He looked at his audience and said, "Welcome to my live stream. We are happy to see all returning viewers and even some future new ones." That was all he said, and this is when Aiden starts to get a little curious as to what this guy was doing. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. The girl looked to be in his age from high school, and she was really looking to beat up. She had some cuts and some bruises, and she looked like she had been beaten up by a gang of people. What this man did, he was horrifying. He ended up climbing on top of the bed, on top of her, and he started to cut her stomach open and start ripping out her organs. Aiden visibly became sick, where he ended up trying to exit out the chat room, but for some reason his computer wouldn't let him. He started to panic, not knowing what to do, when he all of a sudden decides to try to turn off the power button on the computer, but even then, that didn't work. He ended up removing the battery from his laptop, and that had suddenly shut off the computer. He put the battery back in, and he ended up erasing all history of Tor, just to make sure that he didn't see that anymore. It was horrifying knowing that he witnessed a woman being tortured by this man on a live stream. Of course, he would have gone to the cops, but the cops wouldn't do very much about it. But he made a report about it to the cops, and the cops immediately took his statement, but there was no update as to what happened to the girl. I don't know, and neither does Aiden know, if this girl is alive or not, or if the guy was in prison. That really still haunts him to this day, and I still get a bit of flashbacks whenever I think of this. Aiden has never been on the Deep Web since then, and he doesn't ever plan on returning there. About maybe a few days later, he ended up getting a mysterious email from someone. The mysterious email contained named a blank document, but of course he did some decoding, and it said the words, "You're next if you come back." Honestly, Aiden was a little though flustered by it, but at the same time, he doesn't even really know if it was the same guy that killed the girl, but he does not really know. All he hopes is that this guy does not ever try and find him or do God knows what. He doesn't even know if he's still out there to this day, or he's in prison. That really makes him curious to this day. My friend Jacob was about maybe 17 or 18 at the time of this story. This took place back in 2014. Now, Jacob was a smart student and he was always on time with his work, made sure he handed in his assignments, and always was careful while on the internet. There were a few times where his parents were paranoid about stuff, but he didn't really care. This took place at the time when his parents were going on vacation for a week. Thus, he was home alone, but he was used to being home alone as he had his older sister, who happened to be home from college at the time. As Jacob was pretty much doing his schoolwork one day, he ended up getting a phone text by one of his friends. I can't remember his friends' names, but his friends honestly told him about something called the deep web. Honestly, the deep web was basically a very scary place, and Jacob's never heard of it. Jacob started asking his friends some questions about the deep web, and that's when the deep web honestly really creeped him out. But knowing Jacob, he has been through worse, and he has seen worse that never really bothered him. Now, since that he was on his final year of high school, this was around at least a few weeks before his graduation. So Jacob decided to talk to his friends about the deep web and asked them a few questions of what they know. They eventually told him about what they know and said to him to be careful on the deep web. That's when he ended up taking their warning and decided to give the deep web a try. Obviously, he couldn't do it when his sister was there because his sister does get suspicious about things. It has been happened since he was younger, and it still continues to happen to this day. It frustrates him knowing that he can't get too much privacy nowadays with his sister butting in, but at the same time, who could really blame him? Jacob decided to do some more stuff and was pretty much just sitting there on his computer talking with his friends. The next day, it was about maybe two days later, Jacob's sister said that she was going out to the store and that she'd be back in a few days. Well, not a few days, but a few hours. Jacob decided to stay home because he didn't feel like going out. That's when he decided to go on the deep web, as it was the perfect opportunity for him to do so. He went on the Tor browser and ended up downloading Tor, and he couldn't get on the deep web with Firefox or Google or Windows. Thus, he ended up getting on the deep web, and once he was on there, he started going through some chat rooms. He asked his friends a few questions about what to do and what not to do, and that's when Jacob decided to get VPNs on his laptop just to avoid any people tracking his IP and etc. As he did that, he started going through various sites, and some of them weren't really piqued to his interest. That was until he saw that there was this one man. He seemed to be maybe in his 50s, and he started talking with Jacob. At first, Jacob was curious as to who this guy was, but he said that he had been on the deep web for a few years now, and he's gotten along with most people. This really piqued his curiosity, but Jacob decided to continue on, looking over and seeing what he's doing. As he was on the deep web talking with this guy, he ends up getting a little personal. He started asking him about stuff on how his life was, what his sister was doing in college, etc. How did this guy even know what Jacob's life was like is a mystery. Jacob honestly didn't even know And plus, he started to get a little creeped out by this guy, so he politely told him to stop getting into his personal business and leave him alone. This guy apparently wasn't listening and continued to persuade him even more. This really got a little bit messed up and weird, knowing that this guy invited him to a chat room. When Jacob got in there, it was some big mistake. As he saw, there were a bunch of people there. They're doxing Jacob. Jacob had his real name, his address, his friends, email, etc. How did this guy figure out all this information? He doesn't even know. That's when Jacob typed in the chat saying that there are sick people and that he'd be reporting the authorities. After that, he left the chat room and deleted everything, including the Tor browser. He ended up pretty much just not telling his sister about it, knowing that his sister would get upset with him and scold him for it, but he ended up keeping it to himself. He thought that maybe those people would come after him, so he waited for about a few days. A few days later, his sister was down in the basement working on something while Jacob was upstairs gaming on his laptop. That's when he heard a car pulled in the driveway, and at first he thought that it could have been his parents. But when he walked out there, it was a Honda Civic, a 2013 Honda Civic. That was not the car his parents drove. His parents drove a Toyota Camry 2010, so that was not the car. What was in the car was about maybe 4 men. They appeared to have weapons with him, duct tape, rope, etc. That's when Jacob ends up grabbing the phone and ends up calling the cops while he tells his sister to lock himself in upstairs. That's what they did, is they ran upstairs while hearing pounding on the door. At first, Jacob thought they were going to break through the door any second and get in the house, but luckily that did not happen. Just as they were about to give the door a good kick, that's when the police sirens were heard in the distance, and those men, they were arrested. As soon as they were arrested, the cops came up and said that they had taken care of the men. They started asking him Jacob questions if he knew them and etc. He didn't know them, but of course, they gave him look of eyes of hatred, like if the first thing they would do once they get out of prison was to come back for Jacob. Of course, Jacob did get into trouble by his sister for it, and of course he told his parents about what happened by his sister, and Jacob was grounded from the internet for a month. It honestly taught him a lesson to stay out of sites like the deep web, and ever since that day, Jacob has never went on the deep web again, and now he always stays away from this site, and he never been back on there since. Back in 2017, this actually happened to one of my friends in high school. One of my friends was pretty much in sophomore year at the time, but he was very advanced in high tech and computer, which we'll call him by the name Phineas, or Finn for short. Phineas did a lot of artwork on computers, and he even knew the tech and stuff and knew how to fix computers. He had been doing it for a few years now, and this was around the time when he started making his business kind of like freelancing, where he fixed people's computers for a decent price. He had made some exceptions that the person could pay later or pay after the computer had been fixed. Since then, Phineas has made a lot of money. But sometime later, while he was at school, this was around 2017 in October, when he ended up eavesdropping in a conversation between 2 males. These 2 men, or boys, were talking about the deep web and explaining how terrifying it was. Phineas was curious about the deep web, as he didn't even know what that it was. Being curious and the young kid he was, he decided that maybe he should go and check it out himself. He ended up going on the deep web by following the instructions by one of his friends who happened to know how to get on it. He ended up downloading Tor, and he ended up getting on the Tor browser, and that's when he ended up starting to search around on the place. He basically found some photos, sites, chat rooms, and etc., but he wasn't sure on where to start. He ended up looking at some photos that were nothing illegal, just pretty much some documentations that the government doesn't want people to see. Now, curiosity had piqued him more, and he decided to go look on the black market. As he opened up and went to the black market, Phineas can see that there were a lot of drugs and stuff, and they were expensive. When he saw them, he ended up getting curious as to if he was allowed enough to buy them. Of course, he didn't take drugs, and even if he did, his parents would not be happy. That's when he decided to check out the other stuff, and he found out that there was hitmen for hire. He ended up looking over and seeing more of the prices, which they were costing him like $1,100,000. That was the kind of money that Phineas did not have, but he eventually clicked off of it and went to a chat room. He went into a chat room and a video chat box popped up. It appeared that there was a man wearing a mask, and he looked to be really creepy. He was wearing that same mask, kind of like a devil one with the horns on it, and he started talking in some bizarre language. Obviously, Phineas did not understand, and he ended up chatting in the chat to please speak English. The guy ended up saying, "I'm saying welcome, Phineas." How did he know his name? That was the main question, but at the same time, he didn't even want to know. This man started talking and saying some bunch of gibberish stuff that he didn't know. Eventually, he ended up saying that he was going to people's houses and killing them in their sleep, even those who have not been on the deep web. At first, Phineas thought he was bluffing and told them that he was sick and that he was going to call the police. That's when he ended up leaving the deep web and never went back on there since. Fast forward about a week later, Phineas gets a mysterious phone call. He honestly answered the phone, thinking it was his parents, but the number was private, so he didn't even know who was calling him. When he picked up the phone, the guy on the line said, "Don't ever come back, or I will murder you." That's what he said, and then hung up. How did he get Phineas's phone number? He has no idea. That's when Phineas decides to go and get his number changed the next day. After telling his parents about this, they had grounded him from the internet for a week and told him to never visit sites like that again, and told him to stay away from the deep web. They obviously know about it because a few of their friends had said that they have almost been killed, some of them had almost been kidnapped, etc. His parents' friends at work had told them about this, and Phineas is now being smart enough and staying away from the deep web. He doesn't even know if that guy is still out there or not, but he's hoping that he's rotting in jail where he should be.